My guest now, Daniel Lacalle, Chief Economist from Traces. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
In Madrid. So let's just have a look at the results from last night. Just first, your thoughts on the results that we saw yesterday.
Clearly, what was expected to be a blue wave has become a blue tsunami, as you very well mentioned. Lots of the strongholds of the Socialist Party have been lost to the center-right, and it paints a very bleak picture for the coalition in government right now, because it's also been a very, very bad result for the extreme left party, Podemos, and leaves a very weak environment in terms of reaching agreements into the general elections, because now both parties, the Socialist and Podemos, the extreme left party, will want to try to differentiate themselves as much as possible, and that doesn't bode well for a general election.
Yeah. So we can look in detail at this, because the center-right, the Partido Popular, normally a regional election is on local issues, but they run it on "we are not Pedro Sanchez," with the anti-Pedro Sanchez.
Exactly.
That worked for this time, that might work for the general election in December. So what do they stand for, the Partido Popular, now we're going to see for the next 6 months?
I think that the main difference of the center-right party of the Partido Popular is that it has a very clear picture of what it wants Spain to be from a nation standpoint. There's been a lot of controversy with nationalism, with separatism, etc. And also there is a fiscal approach that is significantly different between the left coalition and the center-right. So I think that those two elements will play a major role in the general elections, but it's absolutely clear that so far the elections, the municipal and regional elections, were based on national issues and the discontent about social and political elements. However, as we approach the general elections, the center-right party needs to present a much more detailed program that certainly shows that there is really a leadership contest.
And for full disclosure, you have been yourself an independent candidate on the Partido Popular list many years ago, just so it's out there. But looking at the economy, it's interesting, because this election you'd think would have been run on the economy, on inflation, on the cost of living crisis that we've seen in other European countries, including France. It hasn't been the case at all. So just run us through. The numbers on paper look good for the Spanish economy, but where do we stand?
Well, the Spanish economy is recovering, but it's still below pre-pandemic levels. It's the second to last country in recovery of GDP. It has a very elevated level of debt. Debt to GDP has risen to 113%, and unemployment continues to be the highest level of unemployment and underemployment of the European Union. Also, youth employment is a big problem. So that, added to an inflation figure that is coming down, but still accumulated inflation is extremely elevated. Food inflation is very high. So all those things basically are not good to present a euphoric message. And I think that that was a big mistake of the socialist government, is that they started to talk about the economy as if it was the best after sliced bread, saying that everything was great, that talking about record employment when we have the highest unemployment level in the entire European Union, above Greece. No? So I think that although being too euphoric was certainly not a positive, but it was not about the economy. It was about the housing law. It was about a number of social laws that have been implemented that have created a boomerang effect on the coalition.
There have been a huge number of handouts by the Pedro Sanchez government during the pandemic, of course, because of the war in Ukraine, cap on energy, subsidized transport, just a huge amount of, even more in the run-up to this election to a certain extent. Now we know Spain is under pressure from the Commission to cut out some of these handouts. It's unlikely that now Sanchez, in the run-up to the next election, might do some of these cuts. But is the talk of fiscal tightening starting to take center place in the Spanish debate to a certain extent?
I think so. I think that the average Spanish citizen knows that big cuts are coming. And it doesn't matter which government is in power, those cuts are going to come because we have seen a Spanish economy in which the government has been able to run the deficit that it wanted, the level of debt that it wanted, without any significant fiscal tightening measures imposed by the Commission. And therefore, I think that everybody remembers 2011 when it was relatively easy for the government to say that everything was going to be paid for and that there was no problem. But people see very high levels of debt, very high level of deficit with a record tax revenues, and at the same time that those budget cuts are going to happen. So I think that we are likely to see that part of the debate taking center stage in the second part of the year as we approach general elections.
A final question, can I ask you about the far-right party? Because to a certain extent, they are the big winners from yesterday's result. They are the third force in the country. They will be the kingmakers in a lot of the regions if they make an agreement with the Partido Popular. So with the center-right making an alliance with the far-right in some regions, can it affect some of their votes in the general election? Can people turn their back on the Partido Popular if there is an alliance with the far-right, or that doesn't come into play?
The message of the Partido Popular has always been that they want to be in power on their own. Obviously, everybody says that, no? But it's inevitable that there will be some alliances with Vox. What we have to understand is that in Spain right now, people know that the Socialist Party, the center-left, is going to have its coalition with the extreme left, with the separatists. That is not even debatable. That is already a fact, no? And that the alliances with Vox are likely to be more questionable. It doesn't matter. At some point in Spain, there needs to be a serious debate about why the center-left party has been shut to the extreme by its coalition members and generated such a collapse. Think about this. The only region in which the Socialist Party maintains a level of absolute majority is one led by a member of the Socialist Party that was completely against the coalition with the extreme left and with the separatists. That is a big message to send over in general to both the center-left and the center-right, is that citizens in Spain do not want radicalism, do not want extreme left policies, do not want separatist policies. Obviously, that is evident in these elections. And let's see what happens in the general ones.
So Pedro Sanchez potentially very much in trouble for the general election.
Very much, because Pedro Sanchez has placed the entire pillar of his mandate has been to bring the extreme left and the separatists, not just as sort of give and take members that can help in a law or something like that, but as key associates of the party. Therefore, all of that is going to play a huge role in the general elections. I predict that it's not going to be a lot about the economy either into the general elections.
Okay, well, we'll catch up in a few months and see where we stand. Daniel Lacalle, Chief Economist of Traces. So very interesting few months coming ahead.